I am Lauren Mitchell, 34 years old, and never thought a family gathering would change everything. The moment is seared into my memory. 23 guests seated at my Susan Mitchell-in-law Eleanor Blackwell's elegant dining table, watching as catering staff placed sizzling steaks before everyone except me. My empty place setting sat like a spotlight on my exclusion. When my Aunt Claudia asked why I got nothing, Eleanor Blackwell smiled thinly and said those words that still echo. I only ordered for family. The silence felt eternal until I finally spoke up. If you are watching this, please like and subscribe and let me know in the comments where you are watching from, as I tell you what happened when I finally stood up to the woman who never considered me family. My story starts long before that infamous dinner. I grew up in a loving middle-class home in Philadelphia with parents who worked incredibly hard to give me opportunities they never had. My David Mitchell drove a logistics van for 30 years, and my Susan Mitchell worked as an administrative assistant at a charter school. They sacrificed everything to send me to college, making me the first in our family to earn a degree. I worked through school, took out loans, and eventually earned my MRS in speech therapy. By the time I met Derek, I had built a successful practice working with children with speech disabilities. My work was fulfilling, helping kids find their voice and confidence. I lived in a modest apartment, drove a practical car, and had a small circle of close friends. My life wasn't glamorous, but it was authentically mine, built through hard work and determination. I met Derek at a wedding 3 years ago. He was the best man. I was a college friend of the bride. We locked eyes across the reception hall in that cliché way you never think happens in real life. He was handsome in his tailored suit with kind eyes and an easy smile. When he asked me to dance, the connection was immediate. We talked until the venue staff started stacking chairs around us. The scent of salt air and champagne, the clink of fine crystal, a sound that once meant celebration but now echoes with exclusion. Lauren's mind flashes to the engagement dinner at the Blackwell's summer house. Eleanor's cold, assessing gaze across the table. Her laugh, sharp and empty when Lauren spoke of her work at the non-profit. It wasn't a question. It was a verdict. She was an outsider before she even sat down. That night confirmed everything. I was from a different world. My dad, David, drove a logistics van. My mom, Susan, was an administrative assistant. We were proud, hardworking. But to Eleanor Blackwell, we were invisible. My degree, my career, none of it mattered. I was a problem to be solved, or removed. Our wedding was a negotiation. Every detail became a battle over taste and tradition. My Susan Mitchell-in-law's suggestions were always commands disguised as kindness. She envisioned a grand spectacle at their country club. I just wanted my Aunt Claudia to feel welcome, not intimidated. The real trouble started after the vows. Eleanor's advice never stopped. Our neighborhood wasn't suitable. Our friends weren't the right kind of people. She'd show up unannounced, her eyes scanning our apartment for any flaw. She was drawing a line in the sand, and my husband, Derek, refused to see it. He'd just say, "That's how she is. She means well." But meaning well doesn't leave a scar. It was the little dismissals, the constant feeling of being less than. I began to doubt myself. Was I good enough? The confident woman I'd worked so hard to become was slowly shrinking. Then came the party, Eleanor's annual family gathering, a room full of old money and older judgments. I wore my best dress, a simple black outfit I'd saved for. I practiced my smile in the mirror. Tonight, I would kill her with kindness. I would win her over. We arrived to a room buzzing with laughter. Eleanor held court, magnificent and cold. She air-kissed my cheek. Her perfume was expensive and faint, like forgotten flowers. Dinner was served. The catering staff moved with quiet precision, placing plates before every guest. The scent of grilled steak and rosemary filled the air. They served Derek. They served William. They served all 23 guests. My place setting remained empty, just polished silverware and a glaring void. The conversation dipped. My Aunt Claudia, my one ally in the room, leaned over. "Lauren, dear, where's your place setting?" A hush fell. Every eye turned to Eleanor. She offered a thin, chilling smile. She didn't even look at me. "I only ordered for family." The words hung in the air, absolute and cruel. The silence was a physical weight. I could hear the rustle of a leaf from the terrace outside. I saw the truth in her eyes. I would never be family. And in that terrible, quiet moment, something in me broke. Or maybe it finally fixed itself. All the doubt, all the years of trying, it crystallized into a cold, clear certainty. I looked at Derek. His face was pale, confused. He started to say something, to defend her, to make another excuse. I placed my napkin on the table. The sound was too loud in the quiet room. I stood up. Every movement felt slow, deliberate. I looked directly at Eleanor Blackwell, and for the first time, I did not see a woman to be feared. I saw a small, cruel person hiding behind her wealth. My voice was steady. It did not shake. "If I am not family," I said, "then I have no reason to be at your table." The gasps were audible. I didn't wait for a reply. I turned and walked out. I didn't slam the door. I closed it softly, precisely. The click of the latch was the end of one life and the beginning of another. The cool night air hit my face. I could smell rain coming. I stood on the manicured lawn, under a sky full of stars that didn't care about social status, and I felt free. Derek found me there minutes later. His expression was a storm of emotion, shock, anger, embarrassment. "Lauren, what was that? You humiliated her. You humiliated me. You know how Mom is. You have to apologize." I turned to him, the man I loved, the man who never chose my side. "No, Derek," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "I don't. The only person who should be apologizing is standing in that house, and you should be demanding it." He stared at me, truly seeing the change. The woman who was done begging for scraps of acceptance. The fight left his eyes, replaced by a dawning, horrible understanding. He had let this happen. He had allowed his Susan Mitchell to erase the woman he married. He reached for me. "Lauren, wait." But it was too late. The line had been drawn, and he was on the other side of it. I turned and walked to my car alone, the gravel crunching under my heels. I drove away from the estate, from the life I thought I wanted. I didn't know what came next, but I knew I would never again allow anyone to make me feel less than whole. The road ahead was dark, but for the first time in years, it was mine. He would say, "She wants to make sure I am happy. Give her time. She will warm up to you." Time, unfortunately, only seemed to make things worse. Derek's sister Elaine initially appeared friendly, complimenting my earrings or asking about my work, but there was an underlying competitiveness in her interactions, constantly mentioning her own achievements or subtly correcting my etiquette mistakes at family gatherings. Derek's brother, Michael, and his wife, Stephanie, maintained a polite distance. They were cordial, but never warm, following Eleanor Blackwell's lead in keeping me at arm's length. I later learned that Stephanie had endured similar treatment when she first joined the family, but eventually won approval by working at Williams' firm and adapting to their lifestyle. I tried everything to win Eleanor Blackwell's approval. I brought thoughtful gifts to family gatherings, researched topics she was interested in, offered to help with her charity events. Each effort was either forgotten or dismissed. The crystal vase I gave her for her birthday somehow never made it out of its box. My offer to help with her annual charity auction was declined because the committee is already set. The only relative who showed me genuine kindness was my Aunt Claudia Margot, my Susan Mitchell's sister, who lived in Connecticut, not far from Derek's family. Margot was my anchor, providing perspective and support when I felt like I was drowning in Eleanor Blackwell's subtle hostility. Unlike my parents who lived in Arizona now, Margot could attend family functions and witness the dynamics firsthand. When the invitation arrived for Eleanor Blackwell's annual family gathering celebrating William's retirement, I approached it with both hope and dread. The embossed card specified black tie attire and a 7-course meal prepared by a renowned chef. Margot had also been invited, which was unusual but gave me some comfort. The scent of rain on fallen leaves, the crisp October air. It should have been perfect. But walking into that mansion, my stomach was in knots. I remember being 16, polishing my David Mitchell's silver, the sharp, clean scent of lemon, the cold, heavy weight of it in my hands, muffled laughter from the den where my brother celebrated with him, that ache, a physical chill, the origin of every bit of determination I've ever had. Tonight was supposed to be different. William's retirement, a huge deal. I'd saved for 3 months for this dress, hoped it would finally be enough. Derek squeezed my hand. "You look beautiful." His confidence was my anchor. Then, the door opened. Eleanor Blackwell herself. She bypassed the catering staff, wrapped Derek in a warm, tight hug, told him how handsome he was. When she turned to me, her smile just cooled, like a switch flipped, an air kiss near my cheek. No contact. "Lauren Mitchell, you made it." As if my arrival was a surprise. No comment on the dress. Nothing. She just turned to the guests behind us, leaving me standing there in that grand foyer. The house was stunning, lit up like a magazine spread. 40 people in black tie finery. But all I felt was that familiar chill, that old feeling of being on the outside, looking in. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the proceedings, and staff in black and white uniforms circulated with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. A string quartet played softly in the corner of the main salon. I recognized many faces from previous family gatherings. William's brother and his wife, Derek's cousins from Philadelphia, several partners from the firm. Vivian's sister Charlotte held court near the fireplace, gesturing dramatically as she spoke to an attentive audience. As Derek led me through the rooms, stopping to greet relatives and friends, I noticed the family photographs arranged on tables and walls. There were professional portraits of Derek and his siblings as children, candid shots from family vacations, and several of William and Vivian at various social functions. I searched but could not find a single photo from our wedding, though there were recent pictures of both Michael and Elaine with their spouses. "Derek, come here, son," William called from across the room. Derek squeezed my hand apologetically before heading over to join his David Mitchell and several older men I recognized as senior partners at the firm. Left on my own, I wandered toward the dining room, admiring the elaborate table setting visible through the doorway. The long mahogany table was set for 23 with fine china crystal stemware and silver flattiere arranged with mathematical precision. Name cards in elegant calligraphy marked each place setting. Quite the production, is it not? A familiar voice said behind me. I turned to find my Aunt Claudia Margot elegant in a deep blue gown, her silver hair styled in her signature bob. "Margot," I embraced her, genuinely relieved to see a friendly face. "I did not know you would be here." "William and I go way back," she said with a wink. "College friends. Eleanor Blackwell knows this but conveniently forgets whenever possible. William made sure I was included tonight." As we chatted, a server approached with a tray of champagne flutes. He offered one to Margot but moved to walk past me without stopping. I had to reach out and ask, "May I have one as well, please?" The server looked momentarily confused, then nodded and allowed me to take a glass. As he walked away, I noticed Eleanor Blackwell watching the interaction from across the room, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Do not let her get to you," Margot whispered, following my gaze. "That is exactly what she wants." Throughout the next hour, I noticed similar small exclusions. Catering staff consistently overlooked me when offering canopies. When Elaine showed everyone her new diamond bracelet, a gift from her husband Vivian, suggested it was exactly the kind of quality piece that comes from good breeding and taste, while glancing pointedly at my modest jewelry. The most obvious slight came when Eleanor Blackwell circulated through the room, personally refilling wine glasses. She topped off everyone's drink, engaging in brief conversation with each guest. When she reached Margot and me, she refreshed Margot's glass while asking about her recent trip to France. Then, without acknowledging me, she turned to move away. As she did, her elbow accidentally bumped my arm, causing red wine to splash onto my black dress. "Oh, dear," she said without real concern. "You should go to the powder room and take care of that." Down the hall, second door. In the bathroom, I dabbed at the stain with a damp towel, fighting back tears of frustration. Through the vent, I could hear voices from the adjacent room, which I realized was Eleanor Blackwell's study. She is trying so hard. It is painful to watch Eleanor Blackwell's voice said, "That dress is clearly off the rack, and those shoes with that handbag." "Mom, be nice," Elaine's voice replied, though she was laughing. "Derek seems happy." "For now." Vivian said Julia called last week, still single. "I've always thought they would find their way back to each other eventually." I froze, the damp towel pressed against my dress. The damp towel stayed pressed against my dress, but it was the cold shock in my chest that truly froze me. Julia? They were still talking? My mind drifted back to a sun-drenched summer afternoon in my grandmother's backyard. The scent of cut grass mixed with her homemade lemonade. So much laughter. The clinking of glasses. Yet, beneath it all, I remember the coldness in my Susan Mitchell's eyes, a sharp contrast to the vibrant blooms. That day, I promised myself I would earn my place, no matter the cost. Back at the party, I fought to keep my expression neutral. Derek was talking with his David Mitchell. He barely nodded when I touched his arm. The effort to seem pleasant was exhausting. Then, Vivian called everyone to dinner. I scanned the table for my name. Each elegant card held a place, except for mine. "Derek," I whispered, "I don't see my card." "Probably an oversight," he shrugged. "Sit between me and Margot." He pulled up an extra chair. It was all wrong. No charger place setting, no crystal glass, just a stark gap in the perfect table. Vivian's voice was tight. "Derek, the seating was arranged specifically." "It's fine, Mom." As we sat, her disapproving glances were like tiny stings. I answered a question about my work at the nonprofit. I shared a story about a young client's breakthrough. But Vivian cut me off. She asked Michael's wife about a vacation. The conversation just moved on without me. The dining room glowed. Dozens of candles flickered. The antique chandelier shone above. But the warmth couldn't reach me. The server froze. His eyes darted from Eleanor's icy smile back to Margot. The gentle clinking of silverware stopped dead. Every relative turned to watch. Lauren's face burned with a familiar, humiliating heat. Just as the young man opened his mouth, Eleanor raised a single, silencing finger. What reason would she give? Why was the one empty chair always hers? The dining room glowed with candlelight. But Lauren felt only a cold draft. She was invisible, anchored to a city by a man who barely saw her. The scent of truffle oil and roses hung thick in the air. She remembered another scent. Summer rain on warm grass, a grandmother's lemonade, a promise to herself to be someone. That memory felt 1,000 miles away. Then the main course arrived. Filet mignon on gleaming china. The head server moved with precision. A place setting was set before every guest except Lauren. An empty space on the linen tablecloth screamed her status. Margot spoke up instantly. "Excuse me, my niece has no place setting." The server hesitated. He looked toward the head of the table. Eleanor Blackwell smiled. "I believe the chef prepared the steaks for the exact number of invited guests," she stated. Her voice was pure silk and steel. "Perhaps you could share with Derek, Lauren." The implication was a slap. She was not an invited guest. She was a last-minute addition, a problem, a stain on the perfect evening. Derek finally noticed. "Mom, just have them make another one." Eleanor's smile never wavered. "The reduction takes hours, dear. It simply can't be replicated. I'm sure Lauren understands. She seems so practical." The word hung in the air, heavy with contempt. Practical. Ordinary. Derek hesitated. He sighed softly, too softly for anyone but Lauren to hear. He nudged his place setting slightly toward her. "Here, we can share," he murmured. Then he turned back to his brother's conversation about market shares. Lauren looked at the perfectly cooked steak. Her stomach churned. She took a single, tiny bite. It tasted like ash, like rejection. The conversation swirled around her. Private schools, yacht clubs, trust funds. Each laugh was a tiny cut. She was an outsider in a gilded cage. The silverware felt heavy in her hand. Her hopes for acceptance crumbled away with every ignored attempt to speak. This family would never see her value. The question wasn't if she would break, but when. When the second course arrived, the same cruel pattern. A small place setting of scallops for everyone. Except me. I didn't even point it out this time. And Derek? He just absently nudged one of his toward me. He never stopped his conversation. European versus American business schools with his cousin. By the third course, a palate-cleansing sorbet. I felt their glances. Uncomfortable. Pitying. My empty place setting was a silent accusation. William looked confused, but he said nothing. He always deferred to his wife. Then the main event. The catering staff entered with silver trays. The rich, searing aroma of prime ribeye filled the room. Truffle mashed potatoes. Appreciative murmurs rippled around the table. A place setting for every guest. Until the server reached me. He set down a small, plain garden salad. No dressing. The contrast was a slap. My sparse place setting, their lavish meals. Aunt Claudia set down her fork with a sharp clink. "Eleanor, why does Lauren have a salad when everyone else has steak?" The table fell dead silent. Eleanor Blackwell's smile was fixed, but her eyes were ice. "I only ordered for family. The steaks were flown in from Japan. Quite expensive. I'm sure Lauren appreciates something lighter." The silence was deafening. I could feel every single eye on me. Next to me, David kept cutting his steak. His eyes never left his place setting. My voice was a quiet whisper, cracking. "Am I family or not?" He glanced up, his expression pained. "Don't do this. Not here." He just kept on chewing. That was the moment it broke. 2 years of small slights and silent snubs. A great dam collapsing inside me. I had endured Eleanor's quiet cruelty for Derek's sake, believing kindness would eventually win. But sitting there, this empty space where my meal should have been, I finally saw the truth. Nothing would change unless I forced it to change. As dessert was served, caterers placed an elaborate chocolate souffle before every single guest, including me this time. A tiny victory? I watched them all take their first bites. The room filled with murmurs of pleasure. Compliments floated to Eleanor, who accepted them with a regal nod. Derek was so absorbed in his... He didn't even look my way. My hands trembled. But then Margot. Sweet Margot. She squeezed my hand under the linen tablecloth. A silent promise. I was not alone. For 2 years, I had made myself smaller. I had accepted 1,000 tiny betrayals of my own dignity. I had smiled through the pain, hoping for a scrap of acceptance from a family that saw me as less than. As I looked at their happy, satisfied faces, I knew. This was the line. Stay silent and accept my designated role as the outsider, or stand. I chose to stand. The polished chair legs scraped loudly on the hardwood floor. A sudden hush fell over the dining room. The only sound was the distant rustle of leaves from the open terrace doors. Derek tensed beside me. His fork froze midair. "Lauren," he whispered, a low warning. "Not now. Please." I ignored him. My gaze was locked on Eleanor Blackwell, seated like a queen at the head of our gilded table. My voice did not tremble. It was clear. It was calm. It carried. "For 2 years," I began, "I have tried to earn a place at this table." All eyes were on me. David stared at his place setting. Susan looked uncomfortable. Aunt Claudia watched, her expression unreadable. "Eleanor," I said, my focus absolute, "the soufflés are beautiful, truly. The caramelized crust, the perfect rise. It's a masterpiece." A faint, smug smile touched her lips. She thought I was conceding. She thought I was finally paying homage. I let the pause hang in the air, thick and heavy as the dessert's rich scent. "It's a shame," I continued, my tone shifting from complimentary to cold, factual steel. "You used my recipe, the one I developed through 63 failed attempts, the one you called a waste of good chocolate when you found the notebook in my desk." The silence was absolute. You could hear the ice melting in a water glass. Eleanor's smile vanished, replaced by a mask of pure shock. Every head swiveled from me to her, and back again. The symbol of her exclusion, the very proof of my incompatibility with their world, was revealed. It was never hers. It was mine. The scent of pine and roasting turkey. Across the room, the family laughs, exchanging gaily wrapped boxes. Lauren waits, a painted ceramic angel for her cousin in hand, her hope a fragile ornament. The last present is given. An awkward silence falls. "Oh, Lauren, we must have missed your name on the list." The hollow crack in her chest was louder than any Christmas carol. I have overlooked the slights. I have excused the accidental exclusions. I have accepted being treated as less than. But tonight, something became too clear to ignore. Eleanor's smile stayed fixed. Her knuckles were white on her spoon. "I'm not sure what you mean, dear. This is hardly the time." "Invented," I repeated. My voice was steady. "Let me be specific. Tonight, I was the only person without a place card. The only one the catering staff overlooked for drinks. I had a plain salad. Everyone else had steak. And now, no dessert." I looked at each of them. My David Mitchell, David, stared at his place setting. My Susan Mitchell, Susan, looked away. Some were surprised. Had they truly not seen it? "But this isn't just about a meal," I said. "It's the Christmas gift exchange where I was forgotten. The vacation photos where I was asked to step out of the frame. My wedding picture. The only one absent from your wall." William frowned. "Eleanor, is this true?" Before she could speak, Margot's voice cut the silence. "It's all true, William. I've seen it." "This is ridiculous." Eleanor's voice tightened. "Lauren is overly sensitive. We've welcomed her." "Welcomed me?" The word felt like ash. "You've excluded me from day one. You compare me to Julia. You forget to invite me. You dismiss my career, my entire life." Derek finally spoke. His words were a cold blade. "Lauren, you're embarrassing yourself, and my family. This is my David Mitchell's retirement dinner." The air left my lungs. His family. The final, quiet betrayal. It was the deepest cut of all. "After 2 years of marriage, I am still not part of your family in your mind." "That is not what I meant," Derek backpedaled, looking around at the uncomfortable faces of his relatives. "Is it not?" I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. 3 weeks ago, you and your Susan Mitchell exchanged texts about me. Would you like me to read them to everyone?" Derek's face drained of color. "You went through my phone. I did not have to. You left it open on the nightstand when you went to shower. The notification from Mom caught my eye. I scrolled to the saved screenshot. Your Susan Mitchell wrote, and I quote, 'Lauren Mitchell looked completely out of place at the club fundraiser. Could you not have at least helped her select appropriate attire? Julia always understood these events. And you replied, I know, Mom. Sometimes I wonder if she will ever fit in with us. Gasps and murmurs rippled around the table. Elaine looked down at her place setting. Michael and Stephanie exchanged glances. You never defended me, I said to Derek, my voice finally cracking with emotion. Not once in 2 years have you stood up to your Susan Mitchell when she belittled me. How dare you? Eleanor Blackwell hissed, abandoning her poised facade. Derek has given you a life you never could have achieved on your own. A nobody from a nothing family, and this is your gratitude, Susan Mitchell Elaine exclaimed, shocked at the naked hostility. William stood up, his napkin falling to the floor. Vivian, that is enough. No, William, it is not enough. Vivian continued, her carefully constructed image crumbling. She has never been good enough for our son, and everyone in this room knows it. I have merely been the only one with the courage to acknowledge it. Derek looked torn, his gaze moving between his Susan Mitchell and me. Mom, please stop. Choose Derek, Eleanor Blackwell demanded. Right now, your family or her. The silence that followed her ultimatum was absolute. 22 pairs of eyes moved to Derek, waiting for his response. The sting of the cold door handle jolts Lauren. It throws her back to another rejection. She was 12, left alone in the school auditorium. The sharp scent of lemon polish, the fading warmth of stage lights on her skin, the hollow echo of her David Mitchell's promise, we will be in the front row. It was the first time her hopes crumbled. She just stood there, clutching her first-place ribbon. The paper crinkled, a victory made bitter by all those empty seats. Now, his silence says it all. Derek just looked at his Susan Mitchell, then at his place setting. He never looked at me. I stand up slowly. Thank you for making this so clear. Dignity is all I have left now. I walk out. No one follows me. Not a single soul. The cool October air hits my face. I smell the rain coming. I hear the dry rustle of leaves. My hands shake as I find my keys. Lauren, wait. It is Margot. Not him. Never him. I need to go. Let me drive you, she says. Her voice is so kind. You are upset. I refuse to cry here. I refuse to let them see me break. I can manage. Then I will follow you, Margot insists. And Lauren, I am proud of you. I drive away from that mansion. I glance in the mirror. Margot's headlights are there, a steady, quiet support. But the driveway behind her is empty. Derek did not come. My own husband. He chose them. He will always choose them. The doorman smiles. His normal greeting feels like it is from another life. The elevator ride up feels endless. I lean against the wall. So tired. Do you want me to come up? Margot asks. I shake my head. I need to be alone. Thank you. For everything. She hugs me tight. Call me. Anytime. Then the doors open. I step into the silence of the apartment we shared. Our home. Photos of us smile from the walls. Happy. In love. Was any of it real? Or was I just playing a part? A part I was never good enough to keep. The scent of his cologne still hangs in the air. A ghost of a life that just ended. The scent of his cologne, a ghost of the life we built, still hung in the air. I stared at our wedding portrait above the fireplace. We looked so happy, so hopeful. That couple seemed like strangers now. I slid my back down the door and finally let the tears come. I sobbed until my throat was raw. All the hurt and humiliation poured out in waves. My phone buzzed relentlessly on the floor. Derek's calls. His voicemails held no apology, only anger. How could you do that to my family? On my David Mitchell's night. You need to call my Susan Mitchell and apologize. Immediately. The unfairness of it stole my breath. Around midnight, his key turned in the lock. I was sitting on our bed, a half-packed suitcase beside me. What are you doing? He demanded. Packing, I said. My voice was calm, hollow. I'm staying with Margot. Don't be dramatic, he scoffed. Running away solves nothing. I'm not running. I'm leaving a place where I'm not valued. He paced, running a hand through his hair. You humiliated my Susan Mitchell in front of everyone. What did you expect? I expected my husband to defend me, I whispered. I expected basic decency from your family. My Susan Mitchell is particular about her gatherings, he said, as if that explained it all. Particular? I laughed, the sound bitter. Derek, she served me a plain salad. Everyone else had steak, no dessert. How can you defend that? You're exaggerating. You always do. He turned away from me. My gaze fell on the small battered wooden box on my dresser. My Aunt Claudia gave it to me years ago for luck. A silly superstition. A piece of my past, my real family. I reached for it. A desperate need for something, anything, to hold on to. The clasp was stubborn. I pried it open. It wasn't filled with old trinkets or dried flowers. It was filled with photos. My hands froze. The top one was sharp, clear. Derek, smiling, laughing with a woman with dark hair. Their heads were close together, in a booth at Luigi's. Our place. The date, printed in the corner, was yesterday. The whispered phone calls. The late meetings at the non-profit organization. A cold, sharp clarity washed over me. It was never his family he was protecting from me. It was his other life. My tears stopped. Everything stopped, replaced by a cold, clarifying rage. Who is she, Derek? He turned, saw the photo in my hand. His face went pale. Lauren, that's not what you think. The date is yesterday. You told me you were with your dad. I stood up. My voice was ice. It was never about them, was it? It was always about you. The setting sun cast the room in gold, but Lauren Mitchell only felt the cold. Her mind drifted back to the corner of her childhood home. The scent of rain on concrete. Her Susan Mitchell's perfume masking the bitterness of exclusion. Laughter echoed, a sharp contrast to the tightness in her chest. That feeling of never being enough. It clawed at her. No effort ever bridged the gap. But now, a wooden box revealed a different truth. If you had just quietly spoken to me after, Derek said, his voice heavy, instead of making a scene. Lauren's reply was steady. Like all the other times I've spoken to you, and nothing changed. Derek sank onto the bed. You don't understand the pressure. My David Mitchell is retiring. The firm. My Susan Mitchell has her way of doing things. A way that deliberately humiliates your wife, Lauren stated, her voice flat. She's adjusting to changes. If you would just try harder to fit in. Something in Lauren finally broke. Try harder? A bitter laugh escaped her. I have done nothing but try for 2 years. I changed everything. How I dress, how I speak. I joined committees I didn't care about. Donated to charities I can't afford. What more is there? You could start by apologizing to my Susan Mitchell. The suitcase zipper closed with a sharp, final sound. I will not apologize for standing up for myself. She moved toward the door, but Derek blocked her path. If you leave now, he warned, you're choosing this conflict over our marriage. No, Derek, you made that choice. You sat silent while your Susan Mitchell treated me like garbage. You texted her, agreeing I didn't belong. She pushed past him, but his next words froze her in place. She warned me. My Susan Mitchell said you'd never truly fit into our world, that you'd show your true colors. Lauren turned. The leaf rustle outside was the only sound. She warned me too. At our engagement dinner, she said your relationship with Julia ended because she didn't support your career. She paused, letting the truth hang in the air. But that was a lie, wasn't it? It ended because Julia got tired of your Susan Mitchell, and you never stood up for her. Derek's face went pale. How did you know about that? The bitter scent of brewing coffee dissolves into the memory of pine and wood smoke. A younger Lauren, just 10, beams. She presents her first carved bird to her David Mitchell. His face, stern, doesn't soften. A hobby won't pay the bills, Lauren. That cold disapproval crashes back, heavy as stone. It eclipses Michael's supportive words, and mirrors Derek's dismissive apologia. I did not know until just now, but it makes perfect sense. Has your Susan Mitchell been in contact with Julia recently, Derek? Did you invite her to lunch? His silence was absolutely damning. That is what I thought. I said it quietly. Goodbye, Derek. I spent that night on Margot's couch, alternating between tears and numbness. In the morning, rain tapped against the window. Margot made coffee and sat beside me. What happens now? She asked gently. I told her I did not know. Part of me wanted to fight for my marriage, but a larger part was now wondering, was there anything left worth fighting for? The next week passed in a blur. Derek called and texted constantly. His messages alternated between demanding I return home and offering hollow apologies. They never truly acknowledged the real pain. I maintained minimal contact. I told him I desperately needed space to think. Then came the unexpected allies. Michael called me privately. He had never done that before. Lauren, Stephanie and I support you, he said, his voice awkward. What happened at that dinner was just wrong. I heard the rain scent through the open window. Mom has always been difficult, but this was beyond anything acceptable. Later that day, Stephanie texted me. When I first married, Michael's Susan Mitchell treated me similarly. Not as extreme, but the same pattern. It took years, and my joining the firm, for her to accept me. I just wanted you to know, you are not alone. You are not crazy. What she did was cruel. Even more surprising was Elaine. She showed up at Margot's apartment unannounced. I should have said something that night, she admitted. She looked genuinely remorseful. I have watched my mom treat you poorly for 2 years, and I said nothing. I was so afraid of becoming her next target. I finally asked the question. Has she always been like this? Elaine nodded. Her answer was quiet. With anyone she sees as a threat to her control over this family. Yes, Dad has enabled it for decades. Michael and we just learned to navigate it. But Derek, he was always her favorite. He never had to. And then came the most awkward interaction of all. A phone call. His voice was formal on the line. Lauren, this is William. The rain scent drifted through Margot's open window. William's unexpected call replayed in my mind. His apology felt like a small crack in their perfect facade, but that crack sealed shut just hours later. Derek's ultimatum was a cold, hard slap. Come home and make peace, or we rethink our marriage. My own husband, giving me an impossible choice. Then the certified letter arrived. My hands trembled. Not from fear, but from white-hot rage. The cold, legal paper even smelled of Eleanor's expensive perfume. A final, cruel insult. A lie claiming I'd stolen her jewelry. I clutched my phone. My friend Lauren's voice was calm. What are you going to do? The weight of their threats hung in my silent apartment. Would I finally break? Or would I fight back? Lauren listened to the whole story. Her verdict was stark. You're in a toxic family system, Lauren. Derek is enmeshed. He may love you, but he's conditioned to prioritize her approval above everything. Her advice was a lifeline. Document everything, every text, that lawyer's letter, and consult a divorce attorney, just to know your options. The word divorce hit me like a physical blow. I hadn't let myself think that far ahead. But she was right. I had to protect myself. I met with the attorney who specialized in high-conflict divorces. She laid out the painful road ahead. I didn't decide anything, but knowledge was power. That evening, my phone lit up. Derek's name. I almost sent it to voicemail, but my finger hovered over answer. He called me, his voice a shadow of its usual bravado. Lauren, just a conversation. Neutral ground. I paused, heart racing, then said, "Fine." The coffee shop near Margot's was our meeting point. Tomorrow at 10, yes. As I hung up, the question lingered. Would this lead to closure? Or a new chapter? I was no longer the woman who had silently accepted Vivian's enmity. That version of me had vanished. The coffee shop buzzed with Saturday morning energy when I arrived, 5 minutes early. I settled into a corner table, shielded in part by a potted plant, craving privacy yet not wanting to isolate myself entirely. My hands cradled a warm mug of black coffee, but I barely tasted it. Nerves knotted my stomach too tight to welcome even caffeine. Then I spotted Derek. He walked in looking like he'd aged years in just 3 weeks. He was slightly rumpled, his hair a bit tousled, and dark circles danced under his eyes. He saw me instantly and approached, cradling his cup like a lifeline. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, formality draping his words as if we were business associates or strangers. "You wanted to talk," I replied, matching his tone. "So, talk." Derek took a deep breath, visibly gathering his thoughts. "I've been reflecting a lot these past weeks, and I realize I owe you an apology. The way it went down at dinner was inappropriate." "Inappropriate?" I raised an eyebrow. "Is that really the word you want to use?" He shifted, unease radiating from him. "Lauren, I'm trying here." "Are you? Because it feels like you're downplaying the humiliation I faced. Your Susan Mitchell deliberately excluded me, and you just let it happen. Then you demanded I apologize to her." His voice low, he said, "I know how that sounds now. At the time, I was just reacting. Mom gets upset, and we all scramble to smooth things over." The cafe noise faded into a dull roar as I leaned in. I sensed something deeper was unraveling. Derek's weary gaze finally locked onto mine, trembling hands resting on the table. "I wasn't completely honest with you, Lauren," he began. "About the family, about Eleanor. There's something you need to know." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a hushed whisper. "She didn't just exclude you." What could it mean? The weight of his revelation hung in the air, pregnant with possibility and dread. Would I uncover the truth, or would it lead me to a darkness I wasn't prepared to face? "Even when she is completely in the wrong, especially then," he admitted quietly. "It has always been easier to play setting her than confront her." I pulled a folder from my bag and placed it on the table between us. "I brought something I want you to see." "What is this evidence?" I said simply, "Open it." Inside were printouts of text exchanges, emails, photos documenting 2 years of systematic exclusion and undermining by Eleanor Blackwell, all organized chronologically with dates and brief explanations. Derek flipped through the pages slowly, his expression growing more troubled with each one. "You kept all of this." "Not intentionally at first, but after a while I started documenting things because you always dismissed my concerns. I needed to prove to myself I was not imagining it." He paused at a screenshot of his text exchange with Eleanor Blackwell about me not fitting in. "I remember this. I was angry that night, frustrated that things were always so tense between you and Mom. I should never have said that." "No, you should not have," I agreed. "But what hurts more is that you never stood up for me, not once in all these incidents." The waitress approached our table to refill our coffees. "Everything okay over here?" she asked, perhaps sensing the tension. "Fine, thank you," Derek replied automatically. After she moved away, he leaned forward. "Lauren Mitchell, I want to tell you something that happened after you left the dinner." I steeled myself. "Go ahead." "After you walked out, there was this horrible silence. Then Aunt Claudia Charlotte started saying you were overreacting and Mom began crying about how disrespectful you were. But Dad stood up and said, 'Enough, Vivian. What you did tonight was cruel and deliberate, and I will not pretend otherwise.'" I blinked in surprise. William had always been so passive in the face of Eleanor Blackwell's behavior. He told everyone at the table that he had watched for years, as Mom controlled who was in and who was out of the family, and that he had been a coward for allowing it. The scent of rain clung to the air outside the cafe. Lauren watched her husband's face lose all its color. The foundation of everything he knew was cracking, right there, in real time. He handed her his phone. A grainy, decades-old photo glowed on the screen. It was his David Mitchell. David, young and hopeful with his arm around a smiling woman. Not Susan. "That's Margot," Derek said, his voice low. They were in love. His parents made him break it off. She was middle class, worked her way through school. Sound familiar? Lauren's breath caught. Her entire struggle mirrored in a ghost from the past. The air grew thick with the unsaid. Did his David Mitchell's regret just validate her pain, or trap her in a history she never knew she was living? "He chose the path of least resistance," Derek continued. "He told me he's regretted it every single day since." The weight of that confession hung between them, a lifetime of what-ifs. Derek leaned forward, his gaze intense. "I saw myself making his exact mistake. The thought of that regret, it terrified me." For the first time, Lauren felt a real shift, a tiny crack in the wall around her heart. "Words are easy, Derek," she whispered, the leaf rustle outside the window a soft counterpoint to the tension. "What about actions?" "That's why I'm here," he said, his voice firm. "I want us to get counseling. I need to learn how to be the husband you deserve." He took a deep breath. "And I've already told my Susan Mitchell. Our relationship. It can't continue like this." "How did she take it?" Lauren asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. A wry, tired smile touched his lips. "Not well. There were tears, a lot of accusations, but I held firm." For the first time, he had chosen his wife. The ghost of Margot had finally been laid to rest. "I told her that if she wants me in her life, she has to respect you and our marriage, and if she cannot do that, then we will have limited contact with her. I am not willing to lose you, Lauren Mitchell. These weeks apart have been the worst of my life." I wanted to believe him, but there was still one thing bothering me. "What about Julia?" Derek looked genuinely confused. "What about her? Your Susan Mitchell has been meeting with her. Are you in contact with her too?" "No," he said firmly. "I had no idea Mom was seeing her until you mentioned it that night. I called Julia afterward to ask about it. Turns out Mom has been trying to orchestrate some accidental meeting between us for months. Julia only went along with it because Mom told her our marriage was on the rocks." "And was that the first time you have spoken to her since we have been together?" "Yes," he insisted. "Julia and I did not work for good reasons, and we both moved on. She actually told me to fix things with you because I seemed happier than she had ever seen me when we were together." The waitress returned this time with a concerned expression. "Sorry to interrupt, but I could not help overhearing a bit. My Susan Mitchell-in-law was the same way. She placed 2 slices of cake on our table on the house. Sometimes sweet things help bitter conversations." After she left, Derek and I both laughed softly, breaking some of the tension. "I'm not saying one conversation fixes everything," Derek said. "I know I have a lot to prove to you, but I am asking for a chance to do that. Will you come to a therapy session with me? I have already found someone who specializes in family systems." I considered his request carefully. Despite everything, I still loved him, and for the first time, he seemed to truly understand the problem and be willing to address it. "1 session," I agreed cautiously. "We can start with that." The relief on his face was palpable. "Thank you." The scent of rain on the city pavement was fading as we rode the elevator up. My stomach was a knot of pure anxiety. But then, we stepped into his David Mitchell's non-profit organization, and something felt different. The air was still, quiet, no judgment. William greeted us, and for the first time, his smile reached his eyes. In that elegant, soft-lit room with Dr. Rivera, I finally spoke my truth. The loneliness. The feeling of never, ever being enough for that family. I felt invisible in my own home, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I described the holiday gatherings where I was just part of the catering staff, never a guest at the table. The silence in the room was heavy. You know that feeling? When you've laid your heart bare and you're just waiting. And that's when I saw it. A sudden shift. A subtle crinkle formed on Derek's brow. A light bulb flickering on. Across from us, Dr. Rivera leaned in. Her expression morphed into one of profound, gut-wrenching understanding. My words weren't just landing. They were unlocking something. A rush of fear and hope washed over me. This wasn't just my story of exclusion anymore. It was his story, too. His own struggle, his own cage. Our lives were interwoven, tighter than I ever knew. In that single, breathless moment, the entire narrative changed. Derek looked at me. Really looked at me. "She's right," he said, his voice thick. "I let my need for her approval build these walls, and I left you on the other side." The floodgates opened then, not with anger, but with grief. And for the first time, with real, genuine healing. We weren't just a problem to be solved. We were two people from different worlds, finally speaking the same language. The fight wasn't me versus him, it was us versus the problem. His David Mitchell, William, listened. Really listened. He finally saw the pattern, the control, the manipulation. He turned to Derek. "You're Susan Mitchell. She has always operated this way. I chose peace for decades, but I was wrong. It cost me my son." He looked at me, and I saw a flicker of respect. "You have a strength she never counted on, Lauren." We walked out of that building into the cool Philadelphia evening. The city lights glittered like scattered diamonds. Derek's hand found mine. It wasn't a perfect fix, but it was a start, a real one. Built on truth, not just quiet compliance. The ghost of the past was finally, truly, being laid to rest. We were building something new, and for the first time, I believed I had a real place in it. "Thank you both for coming," he said, leading us to a conference room where Eleanor Blackwell waited. She sat rigidly in her chair, perfectly groomed as always, but with an unfamiliar tension in her posture. She did not stand when we entered. Vivian Williams said firmly, "We agreed about how this meeting would proceed." With visible reluctance, she rose and extended her hand to me. "Lauren Mitchell, thank you for coming." The next hour was one of the most difficult of my life. Derek clearly outlined the changes necessary for us to maintain a relationship with his parents, particularly Eleanor Blackwell. These included treating me with respect at all times, acknowledging me as a full family member, and ceasing all attempts to undermine our marriage. "If these boundaries are not respected," Derek concluded, "we will limit our contact. That is not a threat, Mom. It is simply what needs to happen for my marriage to thrive." Eleanor Blackwell's face cycled through emotions, disbelief, anger, hurt, calculation. Finally, she settled on a controlled neutrality. "I believe my actions have been misinterpreted," she began. Mom Derek interrupted. "We are not here to debate whether your behavior was hurtful. It was. The question is whether you can change it going forward." William placed his hand over Eleanor Blackwell's. "We have discussed this extensively. Vivian, it is time to make a choice about what kind of relationship you want with our son and daughter-in-law." The term daughter-in-law hung in the air, a reminder of my legitimate place in the family that Vivian had tried so hard to deny. After a long silence, Eleanor Blackwell spoke. "I would like to suggest family counseling. If there have been misunderstandings, perhaps a professional could help us communicate better." It was not an apology, but it was a concession, a willingness to engage in a process that might lead to change. For Vivian, it was a significant step. Derek looked at me, leaving the decision in my hands. The warmth of the sun on my face transported me back to a frigid Thanksgiving years ago. I could still feel the chill of that polished dining chair, the sharp clink of fine china, a sound that never seemed to include me, and the hollow ache in my stomach as my empty place setting sat untouched. A stark, silent declaration. I didn't belong. 6 months had passed since that meeting with Derek's parents. 6 months of painful, beautiful change. Spring had arrived in Connecticut, the trees budding with new life. It mirrored the transformation in our family. Derek had become my true partner. The man who once stayed silent now stood firmly as my advocate. In our weekly sessions with Dr. Rivera, he dug deep. I was trained from birth to keep Mom happy, he confessed, his voice heavy with the weight of that realization. Any disruption to her perfect world had consequences. I learned to smooth everything over. I never challenged her. Dr. Rivera's words were a gentle but firm guide. Your primary loyalty now belongs to your marriage. That requires a fundamental shift. And Derek, he did the work. He set boundaries with Eleanor. He held the line. He stood beside me when the inevitable tensions arose. Walking through the park one afternoon, the scent of rain on fresh-cut grass filled the air. I watched him, this man who was choosing us, every single day. He took my hand. "It's different now, isn't it?" "It's a beginning," I said, a real smile touching my lips for the first time in what felt like forever. The chill of that Thanksgiving was finally beginning to thaw. We were building something new, and, for the first time, I believed I had a real place in it. The scent of rain on warm pavement, the soft rustle of new leaves. It was a season of change. In a quiet, non-profit organization, 3 generations of a family sat, unpacking a lifetime of silence. Guiding them was Dr. Winters, a specialist in family systems. The sessions were messy, uncomfortable, but they were happening. For Lauren Mitchell, it was uncharted territory. Dr. Winters turned to Eleanor Blackwell. "Your need to control these relationships, it reads as a profound fear, a fear of being left behind." Eleanor bristled. "That is absurd. I simply maintain standards for this family." Her son, David, spoke with a new, gentle strength. Standards that seemed to always exclude anyone you saw as a threat. The words landed, their truth undeniable. Progress was measured in small, hard-won revelations. Slowly, Eleanor began to unravel. She spoke of her own Susan Mitchell's conditional love, her distant David Mitchell, the immense pressure to present a perfect facade to the world. "I was taught that appearances were everything," she confessed, her voice strained, "that people would only value me if I represented something enviable." This wasn't an excuse for the pain she'd caused. For Lauren, though, it was a key. The imposing figure of her Susan Mitchell-in-law suddenly seemed human, fragile, a product of her own deep wounds. Beyond the therapist's non-profit organization, life continued. Lauren and Derek moved back into their own home. They were rebuilding, day by trusting day. They started a new tradition, monthly family gatherings at their place. Everyone was truly welcome. The air was different there, lighter. David and Susan Mitchell, freed from the weight of Eleanor's judgment, began to share their own struggles. A real family was finally beginning to take shape. Then Dr. Winters turned to Lauren. Her gaze was direct, yet kind. "And you, the family scapegoat, always working twice as hard for even a sliver of approval. What happens if you finally accept that the approval you seek isn't hers to give?" The room fell completely silent. Lauren's breath caught in her chest. The weight of a lifetime of striving finally, terrifyingly, hung in the air. The question echoed. What did happen when you stopped waiting for a door to open and realized you had the key to your own? Elaine, who had always competed for her Susan Mitchell's attention, relaxed into more authentic relationships with everyone, including me. Most surprisingly, William emerged from the shadow of decades of acquiescence to become a more active participant in family life. He began calling Derek regularly, not just about business, but to check in on our well-being. He invited me to lunch occasionally, asking thoughtful questions about my practice and sharing stories about his own early career challenges. I regret many things he told me during one such lunch, but mostly I regret not being brave enough to challenge the dynamics that hurt people I care about. I cannot get those years back, but I can do better now. Margot remained my steadfast ally through it all. "I'm so proud of you," she said often. "Standing up for yourself changed not just your marriage but this entire family system." The most tangible evidence of our progress came 3 months after the infamous dinner when Eleanor Blackwell invited us to their home for William's birthday. I entered the house with trepidation, memories of past humiliations fresh in my mind, despite the therapeutic work we had done. But this time, something was different. Eleanor Blackwell greeted me with a stiff but sincere welcome. The dining table included a proper place setting for me, and my wedding photo had appeared among the family pictures in the living room. "I helped plan the menu," Eleanor Blackwell said awkwardly as we sat down to dinner. "There is salmon as an alternative to the beef if you prefer." It was a small gesture, but significant, coming from a woman who had once served me nothing but a plain salad while everyone else enjoyed steak. "Thank you," I said simply. "Salmon sounds perfect." The most profound change in our lives, however, came unexpectedly in the form of 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test. Derrick and I had discussed having children someday, but the timing surprised us both. The ultrasound photo fluttered from Lauren's hand, landing face up on the polished floor. Bending to retrieve it, her fingers brushed against a hidden edge beneath the antique sideboard, a yellowed envelope, sealed and forgotten for decades. Her name, written in a familiar, elegant script. The scent of rain on the old paper filled the air. Inside, a confession from Eleanor Blackwell to her own Susan Mitchell. A teenage pregnancy. A baby girl given up. A secret buried by shame. The calculation Lauren saw in Eleanor's eyes, it wasn't about control. It was a ghost, a reflection of the same pain she now inflicted. Lauren sat back, the letter trembling in her hand. The world tilted. Every slight, every cold dinner, every exclusion. It all made a terrible, heartbreaking sense. This wasn't just about her. It was a cycle, a legacy of silence and punishment passed from one generation of women to the next. Eleanor had recreated the very walls that once caged her. In the quiet of the study, a profound shift occurred. The anger, it softened, not into forgiveness, but into a painful, aching understanding. Her fight for recognition had just rewritten history. The woman who tried to diminish her had lived the same story. This child would be born into a different world, a family finally ready to break the chain. The polished mahogany table gleamed under the soft light, a stark contrast to the cold, formal gatherings of the past. Lauren's old seat was no longer empty. It was hers. A simple place setting, a monumental victory. The final course was served. A heavy silence fell over the room. Then her David Mitchell, David, pushed his chair back. The sound echoed. He didn't leave. He walked directly to the table's end, to her old, excluded place. He placed a hand on her shoulder. His voice cracked, thick with emotion. "This was always your place, Lauren. We were just too blind to see it." The weight of years shattered, gone. In its place, the warm, crushing embrace of her Susan Mitchell. Susan. The familiar scent of her perfume. A forgotten comfort. It was over. The fight was done. And in that quiet Philadelphia dining room, a painful cycle was finally broken.